Welcome to PMI Manitoba's podcast series, Keeping It Real, where we talk about real stories, project insights, and community success. Here's our episode 10, entitled Recover, Reset, Relaunch, with our special guest, Sean Clarke, a professional speaker and the founder of Wolf Vector Motivational Edge, hosted by yours truly, Melissa Cho, from PMI Manitoba's news desk. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Keeping It Real podcast brought to you by the PMI Manitoba News Desk. I will be your host for today. My name is Melissa Cho, and for today's episode, we are joined by a very special guest. He is a Winnipeg based professional speaker, executive coach, and retired corporate leader, bringing over 30 years of experience spanning the military, technology, and senior project delivery. He is a member of the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers and the founder of Wolf Vector Motivational Edge. I'm pleased to welcome Sean Clarke.
Well, thank you, Melissa. It's very nice to be here today.
How are you today, Sean?
It's sunny out, it's warm out.
That's,
It's just a tremendous day.
yeah, the weather's great, right? We finally felt summer. And
We'll have 3 days with no snow on the ground, then we'll see what happens, right?
yeah, definitely. Okay, thank you so much for being here today. So, yeah, we'll begin the podcast series with the first question that we have for you. So, you've described your journey as having a single through line across 4 careers. How did your early years in the military establish the project thinking and discipline that still anchors your work today?
That's a great question. In my opinion, there is no organization quite like any military organization for teaching people how to get a defined objective done on a timeline, within a budget, within a standard, and in a context where failure is not an option. And I go right back to my first project. My first project was during my first leadership course in 1983, and it lasted 60 minutes. Failure meant I failed the course and I went home. Now that gets your attention, especially when you don't know how to do what they want you to do. Now I remember today clearly. It was kind of like what it was like outside today. It was nice, sunny. There's a few clouds in the skies. We're out on the prairies. It's about 40 degrees. There's a little bit of a breeze. And I remember my section, we followed a path down into a wooded ravine where our instructors were waiting. And that's where we were introduced to the Army's method for getting things done. And the formal name for it is called the combat estimate. We spent some time sitting around in a circle listening to the instruction, and we learned how to read the current situation, how to read the context, study the weather, assess the risks, understand timelines, define scope of work, take a look and how to do a reconnaissance of where we were actually going to operate in, study the ground, reading maps, looking at material, like a mountain of things that you needed to do before you even got down to sketching out your plan, breaking all of your work into stages, and then building in your contingencies, and then communicating that plan. I mean, it was a lot of stuff to take in. And that was a day this all started for me. Every major task, objective, or mission that went on through that process, I found out I was really good at it over the years. Now, later on in the day, it was my turn to be assessed, to be given a mission to do, right? Given this mini project. And all I had to do was move 4 45-gallon drums of diesel fuel up the side of a steep ravine across a little field and be stacked up on the side of a road so they could get picked up. I had 4 guys with me. I had a whole bunch of rope, pulleys, and I had 60 minutes. The first 15 minutes were laid out for planning. So I went and I did all the stuff that I had to do. Did my reverse timeline. I looked at my resources. I looked at all the risks and what I had and how I was going to do it and make the plan and then deliver the plan. So that's the first 15 minutes. And I sit down and I got the 4 guys around me and I'm explaining phase 1. This is what we're going to do this and go through that. And they all nodded their heads. They understood.
Yeah.
So then we have 45 minutes to get the job done.
Yeah.
I delivered the orders through another formal sequence, and then off to the races we went. It was actually a disaster. Planning, we spent 15 minutes hooking up these ropes and pulleys and connecting them to the first drum. And between the five of us, we know nothing. We knew jack about ropes and pulleys and block and tackles. We didn't know when it comes to tying. And so we rigged this thing up, and we're hauling this barrel up the side of this hill. And just as we get to the top of the hill, the ropes they come off the barrel, and it just heads down the hill, right? And it's like, get out of the way! And my buddy Luke's at the bottom of the hill. He's like, looks up, and you can. I'm not going to go into the words, right? He gets out
Yeah.
of the way, and the barrel hits the other barrels.
Oh
And
no.
I'm taking a look around, and the instructors are writing on clipboards. So I'm going, oh no.
Oh
So I
no.
go, all right, plan B. And everybody ran down to the bottom of the hill. I said, pair up, let's go. And we basically, 45-gallon drum of diesel fuel. If it was full of water, it'd be 450 pounds. And you've got two 18, 19-year-old guys. We're really strong. So we just rolled these things up the side of the hill. We just rolled them, dragged them across the field, got everything done, stacked up where it was supposed to be. Now, the instructor, he yelled at because I didn't know how to use a rope and pulley. That was like, yeah, it was a marginal pass, right?
Okay.
That's like going to a football game and saying it was a marginal win. Hey, a win is a win, right?
Yeah.
But you learn from that day. And, well, did we have a good time? No, of course we didn't have a good time because we were getting yelled at and doing push-ups and everything else like that.
Yeah.
But that's where it started, right? So long before I knew like the language of project management that we know today, I was already learning this discipline, like understanding and figuring out what it is we had to do, studying the context and the situation, making the plan, making contingencies and how to communicate and get it done. Yeah.
Great. Very strong foundation you have there. Right. It's crazy. So the next one here is you've mentioned that while competence gets you in the door, staying there requires confidence and reputation. In your early years, how did you balance like deep technical grit with simply being someone people actually wanted to work with?
That's the whole key, right? And you can be really, really good at what you do and have all the theoretical knowledge, but if you rub people the wrong way or you just don't get along with people, nobody wants to work with you. And now you remember, about a year after I left the full-time military service, I was getting recruited into a new internal consulting group within the company I was working for. And at the time, I was supporting an enterprise customer in the transportation sector, and I was doing server and desktop support. And anybody who's been inside the business knows it's pretty tedious. It's a hard job doing desktop support. And I got this call from the manager of this new consulting group and invited me to come in and interview. And I went through 4 or 5 rounds of interviews. And the last one was in front of a board of senior consultants in this group, and they were deciding whether I was going to be a fit. And somewhere along the lines, I guess they thought I would fit into the group because I got the offer. And then after that, I got into this group. I was paired up with a senior consultant, and the way the model worked was that for 2 years I was going to work with a senior consultant. I was going to get certified, go with them and learn how to do pre-sales, post-sales, design, implementation, all of the things we needed to know as network engineers and network consultants. And I was pretty good at it. I got my Novell network engineering certification. I was a director services designer. Had a bunch of certifications. It all came really easy because all you had to do was study, right?
Yeah.
Study and then you go and you work. And then it was out doing practical work with the customers, finding out what their problems are. Like in the mid '90s, so it's right in the beginning of my career, just like with customers. What do you need? What are their problems? How do we fix their problems? And so that was the easy part. Getting in was a little hard. The technical work was easy. But being someone who wants to work with requires a lot of effort,
Yeah.
a lot of effort,
Yeah.
especially when you're tired, especially when you're sick, you're under pressure. And in the consulting side, you're always under pressure because you're always got to build. That's where the focus is, right? Is on the billable hours. Get out there, build, build, build. So I'm up late at night writing reports, doing my system design, doing a lot of things, like putting in a lot of hours. And so like you can be cranky, you can not get along, but you have to keep all of that in check, right? And get along because when everybody's like that, you're going to rub each other the wrong way. And people came into this group later on, and they were technically capable. Actually, some of them were technically gifted, but they just rubbed everybody the wrong way. And they had a level of arrogance that you put in front of a customer, and that was where it really counted, right? Can the customer trust you? Can
Yes.
the customer work
Trust
with
is
you?
really the key, right?
Yeah. And the customers could smell this a mile away. And I remember one customer telling me, because at that time I was a senior consultant and I had a junior person, basically said, I don't want this person in my office ever again. And I understood why. and the customer's not there to admire your resume. They have a problem, they want you to solve it. And I had really good mentors that took me through. Now, I'm not saying everything was perfect in my career. I tried to get along with everybody, and everybody can relate to this, right? I mean, there were interpersonal conflicts because conflicts involve two people. There was something that would annoy somebody, or they would do something that would upset me, and so there'd be an argument, and you'd be angry at each other, that type of thing. Today we're kind of taught conflict's a bad thing. Do anything you can to get along, and do everything you can not to be in conflict. But conflict done right is a good thing.
Right, actually, yes.
It is. And back then, in the 90s and early 2000s, conflict was a good thing because handled right, it helps you understand the other person and you end up building a stronger relationship.
Yes, right.
And somebody's got to be the bigger person, right? Coming in and say, hey, John, I was like out of line and I was a real jerk. Can I take you out for coffee and talk about it? And it was all,
Compromise. Yeah.
yeah, sure. So, think of it as like sharpening a knife, right? You're taking a knife and you're sharpening it on a piece of steel. And the old saying, iron sharpens iron. Some conflict is good.
Yeah.
And you do it right, you have a lasting relationship. And
Right.
that's what I really tried to work hard at.
I also believe in that. Conflict is inevitable and it actually helps people like
Yeah,
improve themselves, right?
yeah, so what you do and having a reputation for being competent will get you there. Having a reputation will keep you trusted. But how you handle conflict, how you work with people, how you can build your relationships, that's really where it's going to determine whether people want to work with you
Yeah,
or people have to be there and work with you.
right. That's very well said. Yeah. Okay. Now, what we have here, the next question for you is your formal move into the project management happened during a departmental relocation, right? So, looking back at that first project, what made you say yes to taking the lead?
I was going to say that's an easy one.
But yeah, take us through the like what your thoughts back then.
Right. This is what I remember back from the mid to late 90s. I got into project management by doing it way before I had the fancy PMP title. I started managing project type of work like around 1998, but I didn't get certified as a PMP until 2002. And even then, my company that I was working for paid for me to go to boot camp, and I spent 5 days not learning how to be a PM. I spent 5 days learning how to write the exam, and then I actually read a textbook, studied for 40 hours, and wrote the exam. And like it's the same 3 hours of everybody else, right? So by the time I had the credential, I already had a few years of delivery experience under my belt, right? So the skills and the habits came first. So I remember the day I was on a customer site and my phone rang, and no iPhones or anything else back in those days. These little foldy things.
Yeah.
So, hey, what's going on? And it's my manager, Rick, says, can you come back down to the office when you get a chance? Because I was out on client site. So I said, yeah. So I get back downtown and go to the office. I say, what's up? And he says, well, we got a contract to move a large enterprise customer from an office building on Portage over to their new location that they built, right? And I just started asking some questions, like how many seats? It was probably about 750 to 900 seats. And I go, okay, that's cool. How much equipment do you think there is? And whatnot. So I just asked some questions, and I felt comfortable with it. And so I said, yeah, I'll do it. And why did I rush in to say some people would be hemming and hawing about doing that? And I hadn't even been on site or anything else, just because I've been trained for this. And I didn't make a charter. I didn't use the PM tools even then for that first one. I was using what I learned in the military. I said, yeah, I can put this together. When can I get access to the building? Who do I have as a team? And when does it have to be done? And how much money do I have? That was basically all we needed to get done, right?
Yeah.
So it was a pretty quick decision process, but I really didn't have any hesitation because I already had known how to do all of this in the military.
That foundation. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just becomes muscle memory. Like in the military, okay, Sergeant Clarke, we've got to move 120 people from point A to point B. We've got 8 vehicles, and these are the types of vehicles. How many trips is it going to take? I just do a little bit of math. There's so many trips, and this is how long it's going to take, and this is who I need at the traffic control point. Like it all just becomes muscle memory. So here it was like, okay, I know what I got to do. I get my people. We go on discovery. We talk to the customer, and everything happened on time, on budget. It was a low risk piece of work. We did have some exciting times, but it was a really good first step into doing a project.
Right.
outside the military. Yeah.
What a start to your project management career. Okay. So the next question that we have here is after a sabbatical, you faced months of silence and sent out over 110 paper resumes. Can you take us back to that story and what did it teach you about patience?
Oh, I'm just trying to remember. It was after Y2K. I think it was 2001 or 2002. You know, it was a sunny year.
It was been sunny year.
Yeah, it was January 30th. I just finished up a 3-year contract with a customer, and I decided that I'd had enough of this technology stuff. This IT thing was not working. I'd spent time within this company doing a lot of roles: business analyst role, project role, infrastructure development. I was doing a whole wide range of things and putting in long hours, and it takes a lot of ideas. So I just walked away and I said, I'm taking a sabbatical. How long? I don't know. But I'm taking a sabbatical. And the way it worked is my term was coming to an end, and I got a pink slip saying that I had been laid off. So I was eligible for EI. So that is why I was able to take away and do a sabbatical because I still had to pay
Yeah.
mortgage and all this other stuff, right? But I said, I want to go out and I want to work someplace where I want to work. I want to work as in the project management space. So there was no real internet back then.
Yeah.
There was no Monster
Yeah.
CA. So I think I went to Kohl's and I got this great big book, Who's Hiring in Canada? And it's filled like with 50,000 companies who's hiring in Canada in that year. So I went through and highlighting and tagging the companies I wanted to work for, and I sent out 110 paper resumes. And that's paper. I think there were 4 pages each, envelope stamps, and sent them out. And then to back that up, some of those 110 companies that I sent resumes to, some of them was able to fill out an online application. So I did that as well. And those went out between February and March. And then there was realistically nothing. I didn't even get an email saying thank you for
Yeah.
that. It were just like crickets. Now, that's where the story starts. At the time, I was still finishing off my military service. I was finishing that off in the reserves. They call that part-time service. And during this time, the sabbatical time, right, I was picking up hours. I was picking up hours at the Army Reserve, but I was sent away on trades courses and career courses in, in the military. So I got sent down to CFP Gagetown to attend my infantry company sergeant major's course. And this was like extremely disciplined. It's like going to school, except you have to wear a uniform. And well, because we were all like senior non-commissioned officers, and I was a master warrant officer, right? We didn't have to march anywhere. We had like a bus come and pick us up and take us to school, and school was school. We had lessons. We had 2 weeks worth of line homework that we had to do. So I get down there, and we go through a phase of the course where we were doing it with the local funeral home in Oromocto, New Brunswick. And these were classes we had to take on how to repatriate our soldiers if they fell in the line of duty overseas. So we're sitting in the main room in the funeral home on these like church pews, and we had a day's worth of lessons with the funeral director. And it's all really quiet, and all of a sudden somebody's phone went off, right? You could hear that ringing, that chirping of the phone going off, breaking that mood, right? And I knew it was my phone in my pocket, but I was just trying to play it cool, right? And he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him. And then I look over and I see our chief instructor, Sergeant Major Gilmore, and he looked at me and he just said, "Are you going to answer the phone, Sergeant Major Clarke?" And I went, "Oh my goodness, I did." So I stood up and I apologized to the funeral director, and then I went outside the room. And that was a phone call that just changed everything. Yeah, because there was no caller ID either. I go,
Yeah.
"Yeah, what do you want?" And he goes, "Is this Sean?" And I go, "This is Mark from Paradigm." And I go, "Paradigm what?" Paradigm Consulting. And I went, "Oh, geez, okay. What's going on? Why'd you call me?" Because I didn't apply to Paradigm, right? And he goes, "You remember Daryl?" And I go, "Yeah, I remember Daryl. He was a good mentor. He taught me deliverable-based project management. He was a great guy. Well, we passed away a few months ago, and I'm really sorry to hear that. Well, we just got around to clearing out his desk, and at the bottom of one of his desk drawers, like coffee stained and everything else, kind of crumpled up, we found your resume." And I go, "Oh, really?" And he goes, "Yeah, we liked what we saw. We want you to go and interview with a customer next week. When can you be in front of this customer?" And I looked at my calendar and I said, "I can be there next Friday," because our course was just about done. We had a few more days left, and then I'd be home and enough time to figure out who I was going to go see. So I sent 110 resumes out. I heard nothing. And then a place I didn't even apply to. The opportunity came from a resume. I don't even remember giving Daryl my resume.
It's like fate.
And one thing you have to remember is that there's a lot of people out there right now. They're out there looking for a job, and they're applying. And sometimes you hear nothing. Sometimes you hear less than nothing. And you got to keep at it. I mean, that's the big thing. And silence doesn't mean something and nothing is happening. So just keep going, keep going, keep going.
What a lesson. It's like you're really meant to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, how did your perspective shift when you moved from managing individual tasks to governing how organizations select major bodies of work?
This is really relevant because there's a lot of people watching this and they're just starting off in the profession. And just like the work that you're doing now, the work that I did really early on, the projects were small. They were very task based. Go and install this server at this client site. Install the server, migrate over, do this thing, right? Go and install this rack, load up this software, and deploy the clients to 400 seats in this organization. So at that level, you don't really know where the project fits in. You know that you get an assignment, you go on a site and you get a bunch of work done. Where does it fit in? How does the work tie into the big picture? You don't really know. And you know what? At that level, it's okay that you don't know it, right? Because at that level, all you really expected of you is to get whatever it is they want done. They want it done on time, on budget, within scope.
Right.
So as I moved into larger project delivery, and actually when I started work for Paradigm, I did the job, otherwise I don't think I'd be sitting here today.
Mhm.
When I started working for this customer, it was huge. It was a provincial customer on the telecom side. As I started moving into some of the larger projects, my view on things started to change because I started seeing how the work that I was doing, how it tied into the bigger picture of the organization. Not just, oh, we're just adding more infrastructure or we're changing out the way that the company delivers high-speed internet. We're actually able to see the effects all the way back to the business, to the revenue streams, which at that time I thought that was really neat. I go, wow, I'm going to do this job. My partner is going to be finishing up this job. Together, that's going to allow the organization to take this particular revenue stream and deliver internet services and actually turn it into a revenue river with high-speed internet access being delivered a different way. And each project then that I was given, that's the way you were able to see it, right? And I go, hey, this is kind of cool. And then learning how the projects actually become projects. That is even more interesting now. As I'm getting more senior, I'm moving into program management with this customer, and we're able to see, every year, various engineering disciplines, they come in and they have work that needs to be done just for maintenance. They have new work that needs to be done as a result of just keeping the lights on and keeping the infrastructure updated, and then work that we have to do because of new supporting services of the company, right, for the revenue. And you're able to see how that work is all broken down. And that was actually my start to portfolio management, is learning about this is operational, this is renewing an old system, this is a new acquisition into a new system. And everything that myself was doing as a program manager and the project managers were doing, like the meetings that I was attending, including in the steering committee, were the people from the service lines and the people from marketing. Because marketing people had to know when we were going to be delivering. The service lines were there. They're going, deliver now. It's got to be on time. It's got to be on budget, and all that coordination. And as I moved on through my career and I got into managing a PMO and managing portfolios, the focus keeps moving up. And now I'm involved in connecting our work to the corporate strategy. And that usually involves business cases, business rationales. There's different words for it, but producing documentation for a whole series of programs that when they are completed, they are going to be accomplishing this objective in your corporate strategy. And then being able to see, okay, now we know what the corporate strategy is, we know what our priorities are. We can only fund 4 projects and we've got 5 sitting here, and then being able to say where the money goes. And then now that we have the packages lined up, we start delivering them into the PMO and putting them on the implementation schedule. So it's been like an incremental journey into going from a task and then looking and seeing where my project kind of fits in with the bigger program, and then where the program fits into the bigger revenue picture, into where the work is now starting to be tied into the strategic direction of the company.
Right. It's just like a process of getting it just gets getting bigger and bigger, right?
Yeah. Now,
What's
that doesn't mean that you shouldn't know
Hmm.
where your projects fit in. And there's nothing wrong by saying, well, where does this, asking the sponsor of your project, where does this fit in to the big picture of the organization? There's nothing wrong with that. I even did it because you come to a point where you go, like, sometimes technology moves so fast, business moves so fast or so slow, what you're doing, and you come to the realization, I'm delivering something that's going to be obsolete. Or why are we doing this? Because three other people are doing the same thing. And I asked the sponsor one time, why are we doing this? And he didn't even know.
Okay.
I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Right? And he, yeah, and he came back to me and he said, this is why we're doing it and this is where it fits in. Thanks for looking that up. I asked another sponsor, he says, if I can't give you an answer, I'll let you know. Next thing I know, I get a call from my manager, right? Get
Mhm.
in here now, right? What are you doing? You're causing nothing but trouble. I said, I just want to know where this fits in, right?
Right.
So it can get you where you might not want to go.
Right. There's nothing wrong with asking, right? At least you would know.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is somewhat a personal question. So, in 2024, a major medical emergency forced some kind of a redirection for you. So, you've noted this didn't erase the career, but it reframed it. So, how did that change how you spend your time now?
Yes. Everybody eventually is going to face something that interrupts their life. And for me, it was a heart attack and the need for immediate medical intervention. Otherwise, once again, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. For someone else, it might be a severe auto collision. It might be a different type of illness. It might even be their career ending sooner than they expected. Or some moment where life gives you the wake up call.
Yeah.
And you've got a choice, especially when your life is on the line. Do I answer this wake up call or do I send it to voicemail? And the problem is there's way too many people that are sending that wake up call to voicemail. So before, it's really easy to keep going. And especially like for me, military is the alpha leader type of thing, get the mission done. It's easy just to keep going. Okay, we're recovered, get back to work, get up, back to answering emails, attending meetings. And that's what I did, actually. Within 72 hours of me going into the hospital, I was out of the hospital, and in 2 days I was back to work. Really, I should have been somewhere else recuperating.
Yes, exactly.
And you convince yourself, I'll slow down sometime. Someday you're going to think about what you really want to do. Someday I'm going to start building something that matters to you. A couple of weeks later, I was at work, sitting at a computer, looking at a pile of emails. 3 weeks ago, you would have said, oh, this is like really important. I got to get on this, right? I'm looking at these emails going, you're kidding me, right? And the question hits me, is this what I was put on this earth for? To grind away at some corporate job and make somebody else's dream come true. And like I said before, everybody who goes through this life-altering interruption in their life comes with this question. Got the research out there, been done in Sweden and in other parts of Europe. The question is there, right? This existential question.
Right.
And what happens is some people, they just say, and they eventually forget about it, and they go back to doing what they were doing, especially eating all of the things that ended up putting them in the hospital with heart attack. Some other people, they say, yeah, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to make a change in my life. I'm going to do this. And what happens is their plans just fizzle out because they don't have a plan. They don't have direction. On my side of things, it wasn't whether my career had value. It did. I had 3 good careers. I worked really hard. I served in a lot of different areas, did a lot of cool things, and did some meaningful work, met some really good people. But after the medical emergency, what am I going to spend my life doing? What do I want to give my energy to? Okay, I'm tired of making somebody else's dream come true. It's time for me. And that's just honesty. That's not being bitter and twisted or lazy. And where are you going to go after that? And nothing was wasted. Everything was a preparation. And if it's happened to you and you've got this, you're thinking of this now and you're thinking these questions and you think, oh, I should have done something else. Everything you have done has brought you to this point in time.
Correct. Yeah.
That's actually part of a motivational speech I give to any team that's ready to go in a competition. I say the universe has conspired to bring you, to bring all of your knowledge,
Right.
to bring the skills, to bring the product you've made to this point in time, right? And that's exactly what's happened. Everything has been done for a purpose. It's there in this point in time.
Right.
And the question came, now, what am I supposed to do with all of this stuff, right? Okay, you got to look for purpose. What is my purpose in life, right? And when I started writing stuff out, I just said, okay, well, what do I got to do? Now, purpose starts with a P, and so does the word people. And if
Mm-hmm.
your purpose does not involve people, then you got to keep looking again, right?
I love
And
that.
I got a whole workshop on that, so I'm not going to
Okay.
give it away now, right? But my first track at it was I want to change the trajectory of people's lives, and not turn them around. Just change the trajectory instead of just a little bit, like a wind on a blade of grass. Just kind of move it over a little bit, and I wanted to help people, stop people drifting through work and life, to see they had choices. And then over time, I just started breaking down and getting simple. And right now, like I've got it to the point now where all of my products that I've developed all lead to this. So I want to help people find their purpose, discover freedom, and live with passion. Right? And life without a purpose, you can spend years being busy, and you miss the point. And we all have skills. We've all come to a point in our lives where we really should be flipping things around and
Mm-hmm.
doing something for people, whatever that is. Discovering freedom. Like I spent 30 years, right? Everybody you work for, you live under somebody else's definitions of success. Oh, no, I don't. Yeah, go to a performance review. Then you'll find out you're actually living under somebody's definition of success, right? You go to work and they're telling you how to dress. They're telling you when to take a break. They're telling you, this and that. And what ends up happening is you end up waiting for permission, waiting for perfect timing, waiting for somebody to tell you it's okay to be you. And I want people to discover the freedom of being themselves and live it all out with passion and movement, because purpose never turns into action. If it never turns into action, it's just a nice idea, and it's something that's going to fizzle out and something you're going to regret. You got to move, you got to build, and you got to take a risk.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do something, and that's a change for me. And then nothing changed overnight. I just stopped asking questions of what do I need to go and do for somebody else, and what can I do for other people? What can I do for others? And once you get asked that question, you start moving forward
Mm-hmm.
on reaching that. It becomes really, really hard to go back.
Great. That's your calling now.
I hope so, but it's a journey.
Yeah.
That's the exciting part about it.
Mm. Right. Okay. So what we have next is about building your speaking business, Wolf Vector Motivational Edge. Why does this fourth career feel like more like a return to your roots rather than a brand new start?
I was at a conference last week, and one of the people giving one of the keynotes, he goes, "We are not professional speakers.
Mm.
We are professionals who speak." And that kind of just stuck with me for a second, going, you know what? He's actually right. Every job I've ever had, right? I go to some event, like a social or something. They say, "What do you do?" "I'm a network engineer." They don't know what that is. I can always see the droop in the face.
Mm-hmm.
"What do you do?" "I'm a project manager." And so you go, "Oh, what do you do?" "I'm a professional speaker." It's even more disappointing, right? But anyway, speaking is part of my life. It's always been part of my life. It is a new industry for me, but the speaking, storytelling, briefings, teaching, debating, communicating is not new. Now, people might say, "Well, I'm a speaker too." There is a real difference between talking and speaking. A person can talk for 5 minutes and communicate nothing. Just because you can talk does not mean you are speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking is communication. You're
Right.
communicating an idea, a thought, rationale, conclusion. As project managers, we know that 90% of our job is communication. So 90% of our job is speaking, thinking, putting ideas into coherent sections,
Mm-hmm.
and then shaping it so another person can understand it and do something with it.
Mm.
And that's a big thing right there.
Right.
Now, speaking was never separate from my work. It was always part of the work, whether I'm giving a pitch to a customer, whether I'm in front of the board, whether I'm in front of a steering committee. There's always speaking in there. And the way of my way of speaking now comes through a story. And I think you've seen it all through this podcast, right? I mean, there's stories. And I like to take an idea, a concept, a method, a lesson, and build it into something that people can follow. There's usually a real situation. You got some tension, some drama, good storytelling stuff, humor where it fits, coming to a decision point, and then a conclusion. And I've really been doing that for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my first speech competition. I think I was 6 years old in the city. There's like 15 other kids. And I was telling a story about my trip to the fire hall. And that was the first time I was up in front of a group of people. This is my trip to the fire hall. And of course, I'm like every other 6-year-old. I'm reading off the piece of paper. Anyway, later came debating in high school. I was on the debate team. learned parliamentary debate, timing, pauses, argument, response. Our teacher, he passed away quite a few years ago. One of the most respected teachers that we had in the city. You mention his name and people still remember it. And he taught us the classiness of parliamentary debate, how to stand up, how to carry the message, even the art of heckling, which in Parliament back in the 80s, it was an art. If you were watching CPAC back then. So the military added another layer. Now we're getting a little more formal, right? We're in briefings, orders, instructional training, communication. And then you go into corporate life, and it's another way of speaking and communicating, totally different from the military, right? I mean, military is all three-letter words and jargon and words that don't mean anything to people. In the corporate side, it's once again another language depending on the industry you're in. Right? Telecom has a different language than insurance, right?
Right.
But you're the customer. I would be in giving a meeting with the steering committee or a customer, and then my next meeting is with a bunch of systems engineers. And I just sit down at the table. I say, okay, I've got 45 minutes. Put me to sleep, right? The engineers would get up and start doing their thing. I'm just joking. Project updates, executive briefings. So when I started my company, when I retired last year and started my company, it didn't feel like a brand new start. I'm returning to something that had always been there, something I love doing. So the new question was, can I speak? The new better question is, what do I want to communicate to my audience? And of which there's quite a few things, but it all comes back to what is the purpose? How can we help you find freedom? How can we live it out with passion? Everything I have goes back to those three things. So that's the work now. The business is new.
Right. What a story there. Now, this is somewhat connected to that. So, what is the core philosophy behind the Cobra method in your no project manager, no problem workshop?
Yeah, I was looking at that, and actually, I went through another change. I think I call it DIY project management now, right? But this actually started from a real conversation. A couple of years ago, I was at a conference with about 350 municipal IT managers from Western Canada. And I had just finished giving a presentation to them on team building and how to build high performance teams using lessons from the Karate Kid and Cobra Kai. So you can only imagine where this is going. But after the talk, people found out I worked in project management because I only talked about managed the project management office. And I was probably the only project manager there. And so I got a few managers coming up and saying, I'm really interested. We're a small municipality. We can't afford to have project managers on staff, but we still have work that needs to be done. Like, how can we get this done without project manager, right? And that was the starting point. And I gave it a lot of thought. And so for the next year's conference, I put in a proposal. And the proposal was called No Project Manager, No Problem. And that I filled up pretty quick. I had to bring in extra chairs for that, right? And once again, I mean, out of like 400 people, I'm still the only project manager in the group, right? But I built it for municipalities and government shops that didn't have these dedicated project managers.
Nice.
And once again, I used the practical tools I carried with me from the military, things like reverse scheduling, things like Fermi estimating for doing budget estimates. But the big focus was on the deliverable. Nothing like agile or AI or any of this other stuff. Focus on the deliverable, understand the customer, understand what the organization needs, right? And it just comes down to, once again, who's the customer, what's the problem, how are we solving the problem?
Right.
And then organize it and then execute it. So I didn't want people getting lost in methodologies. I only came up with the word Cobra afterwards, right? Where each one after something else stands for something else. That was one of those AI things where I've got all of these really cool things, and format it all comes out the Cobra when you put it on the screen, right? So I thought that was kind of neat.
Okay.
I didn't want people getting lost in methodology. And the point wasn't to argue whether they were doing agile properly or whether the scrum ceremony was going properly or they were doing that. How did somebody describe it once? That old-fashioned legacy waterfall. Man, that project manager will never use that terminology again.
Okay.
But the better question is, what problem are we solving? What solution are we building? And that's where the focus went. And that's where the philosophy came from. And everything all goes back to Daryl's deliverable-based project management that he taught me. And that's where the intersection of what he taught and what the military taught me came together. So as I moved into this new career, I just started rebranding this all to why project management, and Cobra's the method underneath it.
Yeah.
And the philosophy is simple. We don't worry about methodology. We don't worry about problem, right? We just have a series of steps and we focus on defining what our problem is and the solution and break it down.
Right. That just boils down to having the problem solved, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the next one we have is in an era of complex digital tools like today, so why do you believe a return to the basics like core character traits and direct communication is what modern team needs the most?
Yeah, I'm going to say every profession has to be grounded in the basics. So every professional, whether you're a project manager, whether you're a leader, whether you're an engineer, you need to be grounded in the basics. And that's where old school leadership comes in, to ground leaders, because your tools change, platforms change, but the basics never change. That's what it comes down to. Just to give you an idea, before we had GPS, and GPS is in everybody's cars, it's on your iPhones, right? We had these things called maps. And to be able to get from point A to point B on a map actually is an art, right? And I was schooled in that. This is the compass, this is the protractor, this is how you get from point A to point B, and this is how you go in the woods with a compass. And even in a car, right, you'd have your road maps. And then GPS came in, and everybody fell in love with the technology
Right.
until the GPS is telling you that you're going to Las Vegas and it tells you to turn off on a logging road and you end up getting stuck in the middle of nowhere on a logging road. Or the batteries die in your GPS. Now what are you going to do, right? We have a lot of noise today, and we've always had noise out there. Right now the noise is AI. Everybody's talking about AI. Everywhere you look, especially on LinkedIn, we're talking about AI taking jobs and everything else. It's noise. That's all it is. 2 years ago in our profession, the noise was agile. I'm not saying agile is bad. The tool sets, everything is going to change, but they keep on the basics. The basics don't change. And now when it comes to leadership, this is where it gets down to now, right? Leadership needs people. This is the work that only people can do. AI will never lead people. AI will never influence people to willingly accomplish a task or a mission. That is what leadership is. That's what people do. AI will never form relationships with people. AI will never influence people through relationships, right? That is human work. That is the basics. And that's where my work focuses on the basics of what leadership is. And it also focuses on management, because management is not getting people to do things. Management is not getting things done. Management is a science that supports a leader so they can do their job, which is influencing people to help them accomplish a job or objective. And those types of things require character, trust, communication, these basic characteristics, these basic tenets that we learned very early on. And you have to just see through the noise and kind of put on your AI earplugs and everything else to be
Yeah.
able to see this. Yeah.
Right. So it's just basics, right?
And that's where everything comes from. I mean, you take a look at even high-end NHL hockey players. When they start their warm-ups, they always start with the basics, right? And then they work up. They're at the top of their game, the top of their profession, and they always start with the same drills, the same basic stuff that a beginner hockey player, 5 years old on the ice, starts learning.
So the most important things are still the basic ones. Yeah, correct. All right, so we're wrapping up now. So for the last question that we have here, your wake-up call ended the corporate grind and shifted you from a what about me mindset to a what about people calling. So as you focus on giving back, what is your final advice for those trying to master the personal project of finding their own purpose?
Okay, it's going to be longer than the sentence because I got to tell you a story.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we all understand finding your purpose is a journey. It is not something you can sit down, run through your calculator, run through ChatGPT. You just can't say, "Oh yes, this is my purpose," or "Ah yes, this is what ChatGPT says my purpose is." Now everything's settled. We're all done.
Yeah.
This is an iterative process. You move, you learn, you adjust, and you keep going. And I've been doing a lot of moving, learning, and adjusting and trying things out, right? Like, what is my purpose? Is my purpose to go to Africa and feed the poor? Well, that was a question. I went to Africa. I did feed the poor. And I liked it so much I went back a second time and ran medical clinics and visited people in villages, arranged for things to come. Is that my purpose? It felt good. I was really good at it because I ran it like a military operation. It was a big surprise. But I made a lot of friends. But no, that still involved people. That was okay. Well, what if I go and I build a church in Mexico? And so I was trying all these different things. What is my purpose before I just boiled it right down to the basics? So I think of it like plotting a course in a sailboat. Say you're in a sailboat and you got an island you have to go to 10 or 20 miles away. Now, if you've never sailed before, you do not get in a sailboat and go from point A to point B, right? I spent a lot of time sailing when I was younger, and you learn this the hard way. You actually have to go in a zigzag pattern. You have to read the wind, you have to know the currents, you have to know the water, and you sail off at an angle. Okay, you don't go straight at it, you go sail off at an angle. And then you come to a point where you use your judgment, you adjust your sails, flip the rudder over, and you move and you go at another angle. And it's a great big zigzag pattern as you're going along. If you're curious, the technical term is tacking. You go on a starboard tack and then you go on a port tack. And sailing is a lot of fun. But even though you're moving in a zigzag, you're still moving in that destination. And that is what your search for purpose is like. You may begin thinking your destination is one island, but as you're starting to do your zigzagging, as you're tacking with the wind and adjusting for the currents that are pushing you off course, and then here comes some cloud and rain that's going to make your life a little more interesting, right? You might say, my destination is not this island, it's the next island. And that's the whole purpose of it. You move, you learn, you adjust. And you might have to make some changes along the way. And that's not failure. That's called learning.
Yep.
And that is part of the voyage. Now, okay, so for project managers who are like so in depth into methodology, I'm going to say it in your language. This is the ultimate agile project, but it's real agile. It's probably, okay, this is your ultimate agile project. You have your backlog, you define your sprints, you move in sprints, you come to the end of the sprint, you do your after action review. You're going, what did I learn? What's changed? What's still true? What needs to be adjusted? What's the next sprint? You set it up and you go again. And you keep going and you keep going. And as I'm going along my journey, I'm discovering that purpose is not necessarily a destination. Purpose is the journey.
The journey.
As I'm going along. So my advice is don't wait till you have a whole route mapped. Because it's just not going to work. Start moving. Take your first tack. Pay attention to the wind and the water and the work. What are they telling you? Adjust and you go again. Because your purpose is not found by standing still. You got to be moving and you're learning and you're adjusting. And along the way, you're helping people in some way. Today you might be out shopping and you made a decision to say, I'm going to go find my purpose. And you're out shopping and you are polite and you smile and you wish the person who's at the checkout counter, have a nice day. Because they probably have already met about 10 jerks who yelled at them today. And just somebody coming and saying, you know what, I hope you have a really nice day. It costs you nothing. It's very small. It can be part of your journey. But you have just made a difference in somebody's life today. And that's really what the journey to your purpose is all about. And that's my new mission. And going forward, that's what that's all about.
I remember this saying that be a reason someone smiles today, right? So it's something like that. It's very powerful, right? It's very powerful indeed. All right. Thank you so much for those insights, Sean. So that brings us to the end of another great conversation here on Keeping It Real. Again, thank you so much to our guest, Sean Clarke, for sharing your incredible journey. So be sure to check out his work at Wolf Vector Motivational Edge. And thank you also to our listeners for tuning in. Again, this episode was brought to you by PMI Manitoba News Desk, and I've been your host, Melissa Cho. And join us again right here next time on Keeping It Real podcast series.